Hi everyone, this is my fight on Dimensions End Entropy Tier 15, and I will just be quickly going through the fight in general and my party composition before we head into the actual fight. So for Dimensions End Entropy Tier 15, it consists of two waves, and both waves are actually heavily magic resistant, as you can see here. So on the first wave, you have the Lunatic Flan medley, and on the second wave, you have the Steam Count and the Spineclad, which is a boss from Charlotta's Lost Chapter. Now for this Dimensions End Tier 15, you really want characters that can Brave Shave, and preferably those who can AoE Shave, specifically for the first tier, because the Flan medley will always summon the two mini Flans, and they can get quite dangerous if you don't shave their Brave. As long as you keep them broken, they are pretty much harmless. The other thing with the Flan medley is that it also batteries itself for between 40 to 50k Brave, and so you want characters who are very good at Brave shaving to constantly shave its Brave. For the second wave, you want to focus down on the steam first, and that's because if you kill the Spineclad first, the count steam will actually enrage, and will buff all its stats, making it actually more difficult to kill and increasing its speed significantly, which will make the fight very difficult. If you kill the count steam first, the Spineclad will actually not enrage, and you can then just slowly whittle down the Spineclad after that. The second wave can be dangerous because of the enemy's high speed and high turn rate. In particular, the count steam can actually buff itself, and if it breaks you with its attack, will likely move up in turn order pretty quickly. And the Spineclad also has an attack that, if it breaks you, will give it an instant turn rate. Yeah, the sword tail. So it can be quite dangerous if you get broken by sword tail. Essentially, it gets an instant turn after that and will unleash its HP attack, and that will one hit KO your party member unless they are some sort of tank. For the second wave, characters that can do really well are, besides tanks, are those that can somehow disable the bosses through some means of paralysis or disable or HP attack disable. So for this reason, I chose Eald'narche, because he can inflict terror on the bosses on the second wave. I paired him with Noctis, because Noctis was just released earlier today, and I managed to actually pull his LD and BT. So tier 15 is actually one of the more difficult tiers, and if you've been saving your harder hitting characters, this is probably the tier that you should use them in. So I just decided to use my Noctis here. And I rounded off the party with Sazh. Sazh gives very potent buffs to the rest of the party, and importantly, he makes everyone hit for crit damage all the time, which will really help in Brave shaving the Flan medley on the first wave of the fight. The issue, of course, with this party is that none of the party members can actually heal. So for this reason, I just chose Alexander as my summon, which gives a healing buff or HP regen buff if your HP actually falls below 80%. So that's sort of like a safety net that I can rely on. As far as how decked out my characters are, Noctis is really decked out. He has all his gear, including his LD and BT. I gave him his own sphere, Van sphere, and Emperor's sphere. And his artifact passives are actually quite good. So he has Attack 108 and Will of the Prince boost, Max Brave 330 and Will of the Prince boost, and last one of Attack 108 and Max Brave 330. For the other two characters, Sazh and Eald'narche are only summon boarded up until Alexander, they are not yet trained for the Odin summon board. Sazh and Noctis are character boarded to full, whereas for Eald'narche, I don't have his character boards yet. So without further ado, let's move on to the fight. So you can see here that at the start, the family will always start by summoning two so-called mini Flans. So what I did was to start off the fight with Noctis's LD, which shaves the entire enemy party, but also immediately gives him 5 stacks of Armiger, and everyone 2 stacks of Warp Step, which will move their turn before the enemy. So this quickly gives Noctis full ramp up at the start, and will help to eliminate the ads right at the beginning. So you can see here that once the ads die off, the Flan medley will battery itself to max brave, and the challenge then is for you to be able to break him before its next turn, otherwise it will unleash his HP attack and change forms. If you manage to break him in time, you can see here it will trigger him resummoning the ads. So all you have to do is just repeat the cycle again, AoE Brave Shave and AoE damage down the ads while you try to damage the main Flan medley while you do all that. So you can see for Eald'narche here, on the first wave, all I did with him is to spam his S2. If you use his S1, it will change his so-called form. And having the exhaust plates on the first wave actually helps because you don't have a healer, and if Eald'narche were to take damage on the first wave and you use your S1 with him, it will actually heal him back to full HP. So the exoplates that he has halves HP damage taken and acts as a sort of like a cushion for you on the first wave, and it also helps to preserve all his skill uses for wave 2, because once you change form, you will replenish all his skill uses. Sazh's Cold Blood is actually quite handy on the first wave because you can see here it's AoE Brave Shaving. It does a lot of Brave damage, so it helps to whittle down the ads while still doing HP damage to the main boss, which is actually quite helpful. And with the crit up buff that he grants, all your characters, as I mentioned, will be doing crit damage all the time, and you can see here that it really helps to shave down the boss's Brave. So essentially, wave 1 is pretty simple with this team. All you're doing is repeating the same cycle over and over again. AoE Brave and HP damage while the ads are out, and while doing that, try to deal some damage to the boss. And when the ads are dead, the boss self batteries, and you just shave him down again with your critical hits. So you can see here that I made a mistake and I let the Flan medley break Sazh, and it had a turn immediately after again, and luckily it chose to unload all his 20k Brave onto Eald'narche, and that damage is halved by his exoplates, and that allowed me to survive. So you just have to be a bit careful during this fight. Keep every enemy broken as much as possible. Keep an eye out on who the Flan medley is targeting. And if its next turn is coming up, just be a bit careful on who it targets. One other thing I realized once the fight is over is if you bring Noctis, you can actually use more of his shooting star or his S1 on the first wave. His shooting star is AoE and that helps to brave shave the mini flans as well as deal damage to all the flans. You don't really need his shooting star for wave 2 because for wave 2 you really want to focus down the count steam first, so his warp strike is actually probably better used for wave 2 compared to wave 1. Maybe save one or two shooting star for wave 2, but other than that I don't think you really need more than one or two at most. So that's it for the first wave. Essentially, again, just repeat the same thing over and over again, and you can see slowly but surely the main Flan medley will go down sooner or later. You can see I took some damage here of Noctis as well, but I guess that's where Alexander comes in handy. So with this, Noctis gains the Alexander HP regen buff, and just have to be a bit careful. Let him have a few turns to regen back his HP to full. So I'll just be fast forwarding the rest of the first wave. And I guess one last final note. For Eald'narche, once he finished his S2, I then changed form with his S1 to replenish all his skills, and then just continued the process. Alright, wave 2. So the aim for wave 2 is really just to focus down the count steam. At the start of the fight, just try your best to hang on and survive. You can play a bit cautiously. Don't be afraid of using brave attacks if you need the brave to cushion some blows. Um, the aim is really just to survive until the Spineclad targets all and the count steam targets either Eald'narche or targets all, because when that happens then you can fully abuse Eald'narche's terror attack to disable both bosses at the same time. For Eald'narche, since he has changed form, I used both his Stellar Burst and his Omega Javelin to inflict the debuffs on the bosses. So this helps to keep the bosses a bit more manageable. To note, his Omega Javelin is quite useful, especially if you have Noctis's Burst, because you can imagine what happens then after Noctis's burst is that Eald'narche will move right after the enemy, will get to attack, and then Noctis will then get to follow up with his attack after that. So this really helps to maximize the burst damage potential. Right, so you can see here that the counts team is now targeting Eald'narche, and Eald'narche has his EX ready. It's actually now a good time to use his AA followed by EX to inflict 4 turns of terror. I chose not to use his AA because the Spineclad wasn't targeting him yet, but actually really now is actually as good a time as any to use it, so don't do what I did, just use one of his AA here followed by his EX, because the Spineclad will soon be using its charge attack followed by its tail sweep, which targets all. So even if it's not targeting Eald'narche now, it will soon target the entire party anyway. You can see after using Scatter, the Spineclad is now using Charge, and it's now targeting all, which will mean with the Frame's Terror debuff on it, it won't actually be able to unleash its next attack. So from here on, it's pretty straightforward. Both bosses are now locked down by Terror. So as long as you keep the Terror debuff on, and you do make use of Eald'narche's AA by extending debuffs for 2 turns. So use his AA followed by his EX will inflict Terror by 4 turns and lock down the bosses for quite a long time. I chose to use Noctis's Burst here because you can see that because I used his EX the last round, all his skills are actually now one skill used for free, and his Shooting Star is actually at the plus side. So this allows him to use Shooting Star at the start of his burst to cause a launch, and because it's a free skill, you can then follow up with his EX, trigger another free skill, use Shooting Star 2 more times. As you can see what I do here. And this actually allows you to use Shooting Star 3 times inside his burst, and 2 of which will actually lead to launch attacks. So this sort of maximizes his launch potential during his burst. And I just followed up with another LD right before he ends his burst to make full use of the free LD skill. You don't really need to have Noctis's burst. You can see it of course comes in handy, but if you don't have it, you can very well still do the fight quite comfortably, because Eald'narche still has another AA and his EX, so even if the bosses can somehow get 4 turns in a row to run through the Terror debuff, you can just inflict another 4 turns of Terror after that. And that's really a long time. If you really do need to, you can also use your summon to try and burst down the count steam. The Spineclad is very easy after this because like I said, it's locked down by Terror, and you can see that I actually pushed off most of the buffs it grants itself using the debuffs that Eald'narche, Sazh, and Noctis grant. So altogether, they actually have already inflicted 5 debuffs on the Spineclad. So at this point, I was actually considering to switch targets to the Spineclad because the count team is near death. But I just decided to play it safe and finish it off so that I can then just have to deal with the Spineclad alone. As you can see here, I used his AA followed by his Vortex. So this finished off the count steam and inflict 4 turns of terror onto the Spineclad. And at this point is pretty much smooth sailing. The Spineclad is inflicted by terror anyway, and it won't be acting for a long time. And I still have my summon, so it's pretty straightforward from here. Just unload all your remaining skills, and because the Spineclad is debuffed and has lost all its buff, it won't stay up for very long. I don't even need to pop the summon, but I decided to save myself 6 additional turns. So you can see there's a lot of cushion here. If you don't have Noctis BT, you can still use the same party just with Noctis's LD, and instead use the summon in place of his burst to try to kill off the count steam, and then just inflict terror on the Spineclad and kill it off while it's targeting all. So I'll just be fast forwarding the rest of the fight because from here on it's pretty much straightforward. If you can get to this point, you pretty much have won the fight. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope this video helped a lot, and it's really my first time doing a voice commentary. So if you like the video, do leave a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you.